Hi, everybody. It's Friday. I should be doing 10 right now. In fact, I am working on 10 right now. We did the video on the AI day, which was, that went out earlier on today. And then things happened. We had news of another Chevrolet Bolt EV recall. And so we said we weren't going to do a live stream. And then it got to the point where there were so many people emailing me and texting me and tweeting me and sending me messages and saying, did you know about this? Did you know about this? People asking us to do it, that we've literally just basically gone screw it. And Winter and I have decided to jump in a live stream, right, Winter?
That is correct. You can see all the stuff behind me is because I'm shooting a wedding tomorrow, and all my gear's laid out on my bed.
We should clarify that you are taking photographs at a wedding.
Goodness!
In the UK, if you say that you are shooting something, they think you're going out with like a 12-bore shotgun and you're going hunting for things. And obviously, being America with guns and things, then we should really not say that.
Yes, my apologies. I am the photographer for a wedding tomorrow, and that involves an awful lot of stuff. And all my stuff is spread out behind me.
People are telling me that your microphone is too hot, so you need to back off your microphone.
Is that better? Let's see. I can also switch to the computer's mic.
I don't know. Right. Okay. So, for those who don't know, Winter and I both own Chevrolet Bolt EVs. I have a 2017 Bolt LT. My wife, Kate, has a 2017 Bolt Premier. And Winter, you own a Bolt Premier as well from the same year, right?
Yes, I own a 2017 Bolt Premier and a 2018 Tesla Model 3 long-range rear-wheel drive. Those are currently the two cars in my life.
Right. And so we are currently both waiting to see what happens with the Bolt EV recall. We are people who now everyone's telling you to move the mic closer. I mean, come on, people. Do you know, I just get the feeling that people are very demanding of us. And I think it's because we make so many videos. We do 7 videos a week on the main channel, and we do 7 videos a week on the shorts channel, and then we do a video a week on the Take 2 channel, and people think that we are a massive team of people, but we are not. Winter is going over his hours this week just to do this with me because he said he didn't want me to have to do it on my own. So,
and I have opinions and feelings about this recall that I'm perfectly happy to share.
Right, so top from the thing. Right. Bolt EV started catching fire. Bolts started catching fire in late 2019. There was a couple of fires around the world, one in Germany on an Ampera EV, one in Ukraine of an early 2017 Bolt EV that had been purchased grey market and exported to the Ukraine. That is common. If you want an EV in the Ukraine, you generally end up buying one from America and then shipping it over. So that's what happened. There were several fires. There's been a really good article on, what's the name of the website? Electrek did a really fantastic sort of rundown of all of the different fires that have happened to date and where and when, and sometimes even links to the auction pages so that you could see the damage to the vehicles. I'll try and find the link, and I'll put that in the show notes when we actually do the show notes. But we wanted to jump in this call and talk about the most recent news in that. We start with the fact that the Bolt EV originally was recalled for 2017 to 2019 model year cars. I'm sorry, I've been awake since 4:30 this morning because I was on the Inside EVs podcast this morning, and then I was on a couple of other things. I've been doing a couple other things today. So my brain is a little bit fuzzled. So if I say the wrong thing, just That's the other reason Winter's here.
Well,
So,
and we were up pretty late last night getting the script done for AI Day after we all watched AI Day for like 3 hours, if you count the 45 minutes of techno music.
I think that was probably Elon's music. I think that was Elon's music. That's what I'm saying. I think so. The Bolt EVs were catching fire. GM came along and said, okay, we've got this temporary fix. We're going to push to everybody's cars that's affected. We're going to ask everybody to have this temporary fix done. You've got to go to your dealer. The temporary fix is going to restrict your maximum state of charge. Now, Winter, you've got double experience with this because you had a Hyundai Kona EV before you got the Bolt EV. You purchased that brand new, as I understand it. Was that like the only car you purchased brand new?
I had purchased one other car brand new, but that was my husband's car, and it was his first and actually only brand new car he's ever owned, and he was super excited about it right up until Kona started catching fire, and we decided to pursue a buyback on the Kona really early, as soon as the recall was announced, which in the Kona restricted the state of charge on that car. Well, and then they were like, well, you know, we're going to have a final solution. We're going to fix the software, whatever. And I actually, like, that day, I called Hyundai and I said, like, well, as soon as Hyundai said, we have a software fix, it's going to resolve this. You won't be able to charge quite as far, but it won't be a problem. That day, I called Hyundai and said, this is not the car we purchased anymore. I want you to take it back. And thus ensued about 2 months of working with Hyundai before they eventually took it back. And we had we'd put I think 13,000 miles on that car already. My husband absolutely loved it, and we were heartbroken to get rid of it. And we just so happened that the same week Hyundai formally agreed to take the car back and gave us a buyback offer that this this Tesla came up for sale for about the same amount of money, and that's how we ended up in our Tesla, which is actually my husband's car. And I had bought a Bolt EV sort of during the time that we had the Kona, and we really, really liked the Bolt. It's a fun car to drive. The cargo versatility on it is fantastic. I like the Model 3 a lot, but having just moved, there's been a lot of stuff we could do with the Bolt that we couldn't do with the Kona. And I like hatchbacks, and I like taller cars. And then the recall happened with the Bolt, and I went to Chevy and said, like, hey, I just did this with Hyundai. I want you to take my car back. And they eventually made me an offer. It was a very long... Chevy was much more difficult to work with than Hyundai. Absolutely more difficult. They eventually made me an offer. And the same week they made me the offer, basically, it was a couple of weeks before they made me the offer, Chevy said, actually, we fixed it. We have a software thing that's going to monitor your battery. There's really no fire risk anymore. And their offer wasn't great. It wasn't terrible. But given the used market at the time, I said, well, if you fixed it, I think I'll take my chances and I'll live with the car. And obviously, I deeply, deeply regret that now. And now I have once again started the buyback process. And in the meantime, I have secured myself another vehicle to use. What? I'm not announcing what the other vehicle is. I know that's a surprise.
That's a surprise, and we're going to make a video about that.
But
not that I, as your boss of a part-time job, should tell you what you should do with your own money, or in fact, be talking about in your spare time with your hard-earned cash.
But the problem where we are now is that when we had a house in the country, the Bolt was manageable. I could run my EVSE cord way out to the Bolt and park it away from the house. I now live in an apartment complex, and the only exterior plug I have is in my garage, where GM says it is not safe to put my car. And my garage is under not even my apartment. It's under my neighbor's apartment because the configuration's kind of weird. And that's a problem. So right now, I can charge my car if I go to the studio, because you have outside charging, but I don't go to the studio often because of COVID restrictions. Right. I can plug it in for an hour or two at the supermarket. And other than that, if I want to charge the battery, I have to go to a DC fast charger.
Just to kind of answer Steph here, Nikki is using Starlink, which is still building up its constellation, so the occasional uplink glitch is to be expected. I've actually turned off Starlink for the purposes of this video. I'm using the rural... This is the internet that I used to have before I got Starlink. It beams down...
Which is terrible.
It's a local ISP that charges me $350 a month, which is ridiculous for 20 down and 20 up. Right. So you had someone says, I've got to share this. Mark says, maybe Winter and his husband should buy a lottery ticket after that run of bad luck. So couple of important questions before we go any further. Is there a stop sale by GM? Not sure if that's automatic with a voluntary recall. I hope that there is, because
I think I saw someone mention a stop sale.
All right, so let's look at the actual official statement here, which is from GM, and it says...
So we didn't finish the story, Nikki. The conclusion of the story is that as of today, GM has announced that recall is now being expanded beyond 2019 model years, and in fact, all Chevy Bolts are now considered at risk of fire, and all Bolt EVs and Bolt EUVs ever produced are now under recall and will need their battery packs replaced, or battery modules replaced.
So we kind of skipped a few things here, because obviously that original battery recall, and I'm sorry, like I said, tired, original battery software update, GM said we fixed it. So that's why you didn't go for that first buyback offer. I then drove your car across America from the East Coast to the West Coast.
Yeah, because my husband and I drove his Tesla.
And then you have obviously you have an apartment. You don't have anywhere to charge. Your apartment is being very gracious and letting you park outside and letting you continue to use a space you don't really need.
Yeah.
I did not pursue a buyback because I wanted GM to fix the battery. And I've said from the get-go, if this was a physical battery defect, which I assumed it would be, I would be content if GM contacted us and said, we are going to replace all of the defective batteries in the 17 to 19 bolts, because at that point, we thought that all of the affected batteries came from the Oshkang production facility in South Korea, or Oshang production facility in South Korea, and that we were going to get all of those batteries fixed. We were going to get all of those batteries replaced, and everything would be fine because we'd get new batteries and we'd go from there.
And that's what we just did a video about last week.
Literally was it last week or was it Monday? It was Monday.
Was it actually this week? Yeah, because it was announced that... So after the software fix that I turned down the buyback for then turned out not to work, GM came back and said, oh, sorry, actually, turns out you can't fix hardware with software. Then they said, we're going to figure it out. And then what they eventually said, just recently, was that they would replace the guts of every battery pack from 17 to 19. They weren't going to replace the pack casings or the pack coolant systems. They were going to take the packs out of every single car, take out all the modules, swap in all modules from the new generation. And that was like the big Bolt news, as you say, not even last week. And then today, that all changed, because if the new cars are also faulty, then what are they going to replace things with?
Well, okay, so the battery packs. So let's go to the statement. And by the way, I just want to shout out to... thank you very much to Good Citizen Chad, who just became a Patreon supporter on Transport Evolved's Patreon. Thank you. I don't know if you're watching in the chat, but thank you so much for joining. Let's go to the actual statement from GM. As part of GM's commitment to safety, experts from GM and LG have identified the simultaneous presence of two rare manufacturing defects, blah, 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 in the same battery cell as the root cause of the battery fires in certain Chevrolet Bolt EVs. As a result, GM will be conducting a recall of Bolt EVs 2017 to 2022 and Bolt EUVs 2022 to address the risk of battery fires in these vehicles. It goes on to talk about 90% state of charge using Hilltop Reserve Mode, etc., etc. That doesn't teach us a whole lot, but interestingly, if you go to the media page for Chevrolet, which is different, and I know because obviously I am a journalist, so this is the benefit that you have here. I'm just trying to see if it comes in here. Somewhere earlier today, I was looking at a different press release. Don't know if it was on the maybe it's on the GM site. Just give me a second. This is why we weren't going to do this, because we weren't going to do this. Here we go. This is the statement that's on their press page, and it's very different. And it says, General Motors is voluntarily expanding the current Bolt EV recall to cover the remaining 2019 and all 2020 to 2022 model year vehicles, including the Bolt EUV. Now, this is the interesting thing. In rare circumstances, the battery supplied to GM for these vehicles may have two manufacturing defects: a torn anode tab and folded separator present in the same battery cell, which increases the risk of fire. Out of an abundance of caution, GM will replace defective battery modules in Chevrolet Bolt EVs and EUVs with new modules with an expected additional cost of approximately $1 billion US.
So can I address something about that?
Sure.
So when we were talking about replacing battery modules in all 2017 to 2019 Bolt EVs, we were looking at $800 million. So they're saying they think it's only going to cost them an additional $200 million to do...
No. This is a total of $1.8 billion.
Ah, all right.
So this is a total cost of $1.8 billion with a B dollars.
I have at this point 0.0 sympathy for GM's bottom line when it comes to battery problems.
So, well, here is the thing. I've heard other people in the industries report, and I haven't been able to back it up because I've been really working on this. Okay, I need to tackle this. Okay, I'm just going to do this. Galen, that is not how it works. I'm sorry. I have zero patience for conspiracy theories. This is not a dark money, big strategy to sabotage EVs. I've had so many people say this. And look, it is making batteries is hard. Making good batteries is harder. And, you know, making a battery for this is several orders of magnitude different. Thank you, Steph. That's very kind of you. Several orders of magnitude different to making a battery that goes in a car. Because how old is this phone? This phone is what? I think I bought this in 20... Probably got this in 2017 or 2018, right? So it's 3-4 years old.
How much degradation do you have on it? My iPhone's a 2018. I've got 89% battery left, actually.
Yeah, mine is at like 95%, right? Yeah. My original iPad, which is sitting back there, has very little battery degradation, and it's 12 years old, or 11 years old or something. But the point is, building a battery pack for a gadget is very different to building a battery pack for a car. And you know what? Like, I mean, again, never underestimate dark money, like, ever. I'm sorry, I don't buy this conspiracy BS. And I'm just going to call it BS because unless somebody gives me evidence that it's happening, I'm not going to spread rumors about it. I want to see factual evidence. If someone showed me an email chain that said, you know, General Motors is somehow in bed with Big Oil and it's all part of a ruse to discredit electric vehicles and Tesla, then fair enough. But until that point, I don't see why any company would willingly spend billions, and the amount of money that GM has been putting in to EVs is just too much for GM to just try to be trying to discredit EVs. That just makes no sense.
I come down slightly differently. I don't think there's a conspiracy here. I do think that when the Bolt EV started, GM gave no crap about it. I don't think GM was terribly committed to it. And when GM did commit to electric vehicles, they committed to a completely different, although with the same battery supplier, they committed to a different battery architecture. And I think GM cares very little about the battery packs that, until now, the battery packs that were in the Bolt and Bolt EUV. And I just don't think they dedicated the kind of resources. I think they went lowest bidder and didn't devote the kind of resources to it in the beginning that the project needed.
This is what I'm saying. Never attribute to malice what can
That's basically what I'm saying too.
Right? This is not GM. And by the way, thank you to Weston and to Brent as well for helping us out there with the live stream. Very kind of you. Never attribute to malice what can be explained by incompetence. And I would also add here, by inexperience. I really hate it when people get really mad and angry about there being some kind of global cabal that's trying to take down Tesla, and everybody else is just in on it, and we're in on it, and everybody else is in on it. No, this is, if you think about the progression from electric vehicles 10 years ago to today, what we've seen in terms of battery technology, and I'm not making excuses for GM, and I'm not making excuses for LG either, because both of them should have known better and should have done more due diligence.
And should have handled this problem way better.
Should be handling it, not past tense, present tense, should be handling it better. Is that, this is something that these companies have very little experience in. Making batteries is one thing. LG Energy has been making batteries for years, but LG Energy has not been making batteries for vehicles for decades, like it's been making electronics for decades. It's a different bailiwick, and I think that incompetency backed up by cockiness is probably what's to blame here, because everybody thinks we know how to make a car, therefore we know how to make an electric car.
Dyson, sorry.
Right? And just to be clear here, that wasn't your Tourette's.
No, that was me being snarky about the fact that Dyson, the vacuum company, had all sorts of plans to make an electric car, and they really insisted they were making an electric car until they realized that's hard. Mm-hmm. So here, you and I talked about this the other day. I think there's something here. So I think that as an industry, or not even as industry, as a consumer base, there's something that we need to own up to a little bit, and just as a populace, and that is that people are asking electric cars to do more and more and more. Every generation of electric car, people want more range, they want faster 0 to 60 time, and they want faster DC fast charging. And what I said to you is like, look, if we had continued really hammering on EV development for the last 30 years, we would be in a very different place than we are. But now the world is burning, and people are going, oh, climate change might actually be a thing. Maybe I should stop spewing petrol fumes out into the atmosphere. Let's look at an electric vehicle. And now electric vehicle development and adoption is happening at an absurdly compressed timescale. The speed with which EV adoption has moved. I mean, you, Nikki, are considered an unbelievable early adopter of electric vehicle technology. 2006. In that you start driving EVs in 2006. And let's be honest, when we say you started driving electric cars in 2006, the Bolt is an electric car. You were driving a thing that was allowed to go on roads and ran on batteries. Yeah. Like, this stuff has moved unbelievably fast. And as long as market demand keeps saying, I want more, companies are going to continue pushing the boundary of what they can do, and we're going to continue having problems because there isn't a cultural demand for safety in EV battery packs right now. Now, to be clear, I'm not making excuses for GM or LG Energy. I'm in a place right now where I won't even contemplate buying a car with LG Energy batteries in it. That's me personally. Multiple people have said in Bolt forums have said, like, the owners of these cars are at least significantly to blame because they were charging their cars to full and they were discharging their cars to low. And I personally don't believe that. I believe GM sold us cars and said, this is a car. They didn't say, you're beta testing this. They didn't say, this is experimental. They said, this is a car. Go drive it. This is its capacity. And, you know,
but
they said don't charge it to full on the regular if you don't have to, because it'll shorten the life of your battery. But I know people who charge to full on the regular because they need to. And shortening the life of their battery, that's different than your battery might catch fire.
Yeah, you're totally right. Sorry to interrupt you. I just want to apologize to George. I think I have blocked George for 5 minutes from commenting in the chat. George, if you're watching, I am sorry. That was something I did by accident, and now I don't know how to undo it because I'm using StreamYard for the second time as growing here. So I'm not trying to ban you. I'm sorry. I hit the button. I did the wrong thing. Does this mean the 2017 to 2019 Ioniq EV will be recalled too? I don't know, because I don't know if those batteries are affected. Couple of things you said that I want to kind of loop back on here, Winter, and one of them is every electric car that has reached market has had a problem. And I think we have to be honest with ourselves about that. Also, thank you, Zach. I saw your comment come in earlier. I don't have a problem with cars coming to market that have problems, because it is mathematically impossible for every automaker to have every problem sorted at time of launch. There has never been a car in the history of the automotive industry that has not had some issue after launch. What sets the grown-ups from the children is how they go about solving it. Now, GM is apparently really going after LG now. And I would be too, because, you know, nearly $2 billion out of pocket to try and fix this issue.
And that doesn't cost what Hyundai had to spend to fix all the Konas that they're still working on. That's not a small financial commitment either.
Right. And so a lot of people are asking, you know, are other cars involved? At the moment, as far as we know, it's just the Bolt and the Bolt EUV. It's not the Sparks. So someone was saying 2015, 2016 Spark EV use LG2. Just because the battery was made by the same company does not mean it's going to have the same defect. So something
also, I think the Bolt has pouch cells, doesn't it? Whereas I think the earlier ones had cased cells. I could be wrong about that.
I don't fully know, but you know, we are trying to set up a stream next week with someone who is an expert on the matter, who commented on one of our videos recently because we linked to them, and we're going to work. I'm not going to say who it is. You can probably figure it out, but hopefully, fingers crossed, they'll join us. Now, the point I'm trying to make, thank you, Weston, for becoming a patron. I really am very, very touched that you are a patron. We are very close to 1,000 patrons. You know, let's try and get to 1,000 patrons in the stream if we can. So we are, just because a battery is made by a particular company doesn't mean it's the same battery chemistry. As I understand it, how it works is that battery suppliers work with automakers to design batteries for their cars. They work on whatever battery chemistry happens to be preferred by the automaker. The automaker can pick the battery chemistry or work with the battery supplier. They say, can you make this chemistry? They test it in the lab. They test it in the vehicles, and then they produce them. But even if LG is making batteries for company A and company B, they might be different batteries because there might be intense competition between the companies. There might be an NDA between the two different companies. And LG will very often agree, okay, we'll produce your batteries for your car at this facility and your batteries for your car at that facility. So they're not made on the same production line. They're not shared. The only time you might see that if you have two twin companies. So for example, Hyundai Kia or Nissan Renault, for example, I don't think even that happened, because if you think about it, the Nissan Leaf uses batteries that are made at Nissan's formerly owned facilities. They're not owned by Nissan anymore. They're owned by AESC and I think another company.
And Kia cars mostly use SKI batteries instead of
Right.
LG batteries.
Right. So what batteries do they use to replace existing batteries? What people are not understanding here, and I think what I need to explain, is that it's not the batteries that are catching fire because of the chemistry. The batteries are catching fire because of a physical manufacturing defect within the cell. Now, I'm going to predict that what's happened is that there's been a manufacturing error either in the machine's original design, the machine that they're using to produce the cells, that was duplicated from South Korea over to the US.
That's the thing I don't get, is how, I mean, we were told this was a defect on the manufacturing line in South Korea, and the fact that it's occurred at the manufacturing facility in America now, because the Bolt that just burned had an American-made battery, that to me speaks to something. If it is an issue not with the design but with the manufacturing process, that speaks to there being something really wrong with how LG set up these manufacturing product lines.
And that's the challenge. That's why GM has issued this recall now.
Yeah.
Is because 2020, 2021, 2022 Bolts, which all use US made batteries, now have that same thing. The battery defect, as AJG says in the chat, is a torn anode tab and a folded separator. That is the known defect. But that could be caused, what I'm trying to explain here is that could be caused by one faulty machine on the entire production line. I've visited Nissan's battery production facility in the UK before, and they would have exact duplicate machines. They'd have 2 or 3 lines running at the same time to make all the batteries that they need. And so at some parts in the process, it might not be duplicated. It might just be a single machine. But at other points in the process, especially very early on when you're making the actual cells, and to make the cells, you are literally layering things one on top of another. If there is a fault with one of those machines, then you have a problem that can be replicated. And it sounds potentially as if A, this was a QC problem, and B, maybe an intermittent fault. Whether it was a problem with it could be a problem with the programming, because all of these machines are robotic. It could be a problem with the programming. It could be a problem with the human who's tasked with QCing all those cells. And I've been in a battery facility. I've seen how intensely they examine everything to make sure that every little bit of the process is perfect. And all it takes is, like someone said, a Friday employee, someone who's not necessarily paying attention, somebody who's not trained to the same level as their colleagues. You then have an issue, and it could be anything from a human hair getting into the battery facility because someone didn't decontaminate effectively. It could be a physical problem with the anode and the separator that's caused by someone trying to push things through the machine too quickly or not quickly enough. And so that all plays a part. And
well, in this case, we're told that it's 2 separate defects, and it may be that there are plenty of cars rolling around with one or the other, and it's when a cell gets both at once that you have problems, which is very weird to me.
Right.
You know, one thing you didn't mention, but that I personally think, if we ever find out exactly what the problem is, I think that my personal theory is that there is a component in the manufacturing process which is consumable, and that if you don't change some piece of a machine out with replacement parts frequently enough, it wears down minutely, and that causes some sort of misalignment. But that's a pet theory.
And manufacturing defects can occur at any point in the manufacturing line, and if it's an intermittent one, such as caused by a different shift, somebody not looking after the machine properly, or a a defect within the mechanical part of the machinery that means sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, they can be almost impossible to track down and solve.
I will
mean,
be very
you used
surprised.
to work in manufacturing, right? You used to work into product design.
I worked in product design, and I was involved to some extent in studying manufacturing. I will be very surprised if we ever find out exactly what the problem here is. I suspect we won't. You know, I question if it takes a certain amount of time for these problems to become problems. You had said to me a while back, you said, like, look, the 2020s are fine. And I said, like, we don't know that yet. I wonder if if they just have to go through a certain number of cycles before we start to see the problem rear its ugly head.
And I'm guessing that the machinery that built, the other thing that I think we should note is I'm guessing the machinery that is on the production line in Korea and the production line in America is the same machinery and has probably been set up using the same template.
All of this, as I said to you earlier today, all of this raises really interesting questions about SKI and LGE and LG's claims that SKI stole their designs.
No, I'm sorry. My love of LG has never been high. I've spoken
mine
to people
either.
within the industry, and everybody I've spoken to has said that LG has behaved like pick your analogy, right? The 10,000 pound gorilla in the room or the mafia boss, you know.
So
playing off companies against each other, trying to get the very highest price for the material, dicking around customers.
So we had a question about whether we're soured enough on LG or GM to stay away from their products. And I can speak for myself. I am soured on LG because I've had 2 LG Energy cars that I've had to give up. I am not soured on Hyundai because Hyundai, I feel, treated me quite well through the entire process. It will be a very, very, very long time before I'll be willing to own another General Motors product. I know you don't feel the same way because all car companies have problems.
Right, so all car companies have problems. That's
to me, it's not having a problem doesn't lose me as a customer. It's about how you handle the problem. And at this point,
that's my feeling too.
Yeah. At this point, I feel very done with General Motors. And General Motors didn't have, like you and LG, I didn't have very warm feelings toward General Motors to begin with. I felt like I would not buy a petrol General Motors car, but I was willing to take a shot on the Bolt because I really, really liked the Bolt. And a lot of the problems with GM cars, I thought, it doesn't have an ignition switch. It doesn't have a petrol engine to throw a rod. Like, I thought, like, you know, they're not going to. It's a harder car to screw up.
It is a harder car to
and
screw
in fairness, I still don't feel like GM screwed up this car. I feel like LG did. I feel like GM has catastrophically screwed up how they handled the problem, which in fairness, this is a company that had ignition switches that were killing people for like a decade before they did anything about it.
So I think I am kind of in the same boat. I think I'm mad at GM for not handling it right. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you so much,
Laura
Laura.
was one of the people who, she's a Patreon as well. She's one of the people who reached out and said, are you going to do it? And I'm like, so I've been working. Like, I want everybody to know, I started work this morning at 5:30. I have been working now for 13 hours and 15 minutes, and I've still got 10 to produce.
And you ended work last night at almost midnight.
Yes. And we have 994 Patreons. So come on, get to 1,000. If you get to 1,000 Patreons by the end of this, I will be happy. Winter is currently being paid by your donations.
That's true. So I actually want to talk real quick about something that I've seen come up because, of course, I'm not only a GM.
Oh, I missed.
Yep.
Sorry, I accidentally hit you.
So I'm not only a GM customer, I'm also a Tesla customer. And I want to talk about Tesla for 2 seconds and not about the silly robot. I have seen a lot of, let's be honest, cheering from the Tesla fan community, both in our comments and in Tesla owner forums. I'm in a bunch of Tesla owner forums. People who are really legitimately happy about the Bolt situation, because they really feel like, this is proof that Tesla's the only company that can make an EV that doesn't suck. And I want to address that for 2 seconds, because
before you do, can I just say, I want to quit when that happens.
I know.
And as you know, I have been really furious this afternoon, because in response to the really long video that we made on the Tesla AI Day, in which I praised Tesla for its chip design.
And never mentioned anyone except for the fact that Toyota and Honda both made bipedal robots. That's the only time you mentioned any other companies.
And we had I had to delete about 40 comments from Tesla fanboys swearing at me because of the Bolt fires and the recall.
I mean, the thing is, because you don't own a Bolt, you don't own a Tesla, rather. You don't spend as much time as I do in Tesla community, which means that you don't see all the really, really awesome people who also own Teslas.
No, I've got lots of awesome friends who own Teslas.
I know.
That's the way I do it.
The thing that I wanted to address is that, like, one thing I've seen a bunch of people saying is, well, this is good because now these Bolt people will just go buy Teslas. And there's a couple of points on that. One, Tesla doesn't make a car which is equivalent to the Bolt. The Model Y is the closest, but it's much bigger. It's not quite the same kind of hatch. And the Model Y, I looked because my husband and I have been saying that, did we want to think about getting rid of our 3 and look at a Y? And the Y starts in the 50s for cost. And even on the used market, when I bought my Model 3, my husband's Model 3 was the cheapest Model 3 in America that had a clean title. And there's complicated reasons why it was so cheap. And that car was $36,000. My Bolt, which I bought with about the same mileage as we bought the Tesla, I bought for $19,200. Maybe it was $19,500. And that was a Premier. I could have gone cheaper if I got an LT, but I wanted a Premier. So that's a big thing we're talking about the used market. And I don't think that all these Bolt people are going to just go buy Teslas. I think, and I hate saying this, I think many of them are going to go back to petrol cars for a while. I think that this has scared a lot of people. And I think that the whole confused handling of it and the technical minutia and mishigas of it are going to lead a lot of people to go back to petrol. And no one wins when that happens. You've
swallowed a thesaurus today. That was.
And so George says Model T needs to come out ASAP. I'm going to, for 2 seconds. I believe that Tesla will produce a low-cost car. I believe it will probably be a hatchback. I believe I will probably really like it when it does. I don't think we're going to see it for a very, very long time. And that's because Tesla has all the demand for batteries it can possibly have, especially for 4680s. It has a number of cars that people have reservations on that haven't come out yet. There's a lot of reservation holders for Cybertruck. There's a lot of reservation holders for Model S long range. There's a lot of reservation holders for Roadsters. And the Model 2, or whatever it ends up being called, because Tesla hasn't said it's going to be called the Model 2,
right.
That car is going to be a lower profit margin car. And I think Tesla is going to take a very long time before they have the battery supply and just general customer demand falls enough for their very, very expensive cars to justify ramping up production on a low margin vehicle. I wish that I thought that a Model 2, wherever it's going to be called, be my next car. I know what my next car is going to be. I don't plan to have that car for a terribly long time.
I hope you keep it, because
even if I get something else, I probably will keep it. Although my husband is already making noises about what he wants to do with it.
I want to help you restore it because it needs a little bit of TLC.
It needs some love, and my husband kind of wants to look into an expanded battery pack for it. But we're going to do a whole thing about that car. I will just tell you that car's name is Meep. And I won't tell you what Meep is yet.
Well,
But
maybe people
it's,
could. Would you mind if people start guessing?
if people want to guess what I have bought, they
They're
are
never
welcome
gonna guess.
to.
I mean, maybe someone will if they know the area well.
And if they know me,
you.
if they know me really well,
They
I
might.
like profoundly weird little cars. I drove classic VW Beetles for a long time in Maine, where it was very cold to drive a classic Beetle. But yes, I just want to say I have no patience for the cheering for people who bought Bolts and are now screwed, because that's just that doesn't make
that's dickish
anything
behavior, right?
better.
I mean, we said in the video. I said in the video earlier, and I guess you did as well because you helped me write that last bit of script. Winter was up late last night helping me. We had Tesla wanted to bring electric vehicles to the market and to accelerate the transition to renewable energy, and it's done that. But also, I think a lot of us expected affordability to be in there, but it hasn't yet. It's not happened yet. We've got plenty of guesses. GM is doing
many
now
are
what
guesses
should have
of
been
things
done
that I
initially.
would love. Many of these are guesses of things that I would have loved, but none of them are correct.
No.
I would love. We have talked. My husband talked about us getting a Beetle and converting it, and right now the cost is just too high. I do have a video coming out for the channel. In the not so distant future, about a converted 1971 VW Super Beetle, that a beautiful EV conversion that I got to go for a ride in, that you're going to be seeing a video on not so distant future.
Oh, I'm sorry. People like this one. Winter is coming. You must get so fed up of that reference. I
certainly hear it a fair bit. I've heard it a lot more back when I worked in the adult entertainment industry. Everyone brought it up when I worked much more full-time in that world.
Oh my goodness. Our neighbor just bought a Toyota Corolla, says Brent, and turned in his Bolt. And I think
that's heartbreaking, but I understand it, especially because the EV market, including the used EV market, is so absurdly expensive, and the Bolt was the low cost, or at least reasonably cost option. I had someone say to me in one of our comments on one of our videos, like, look, you bought an incredibly cheap car, what did you expect? And it's like, I spent 19 grand on the Bolt. Do you know how fantastic a used internal combustion car I could buy for 19 grand?
Yeah.
You know, we've spent 36 on our Tesla with, it was already 2.25 years old. You know, at 36 grand can buy you an internal combustion car. Right now, in our area, cars with 80 miles of range, Spark EVs, Fiat 500Es, they're going for $12,000, $13,000, $14,000. And don't get me started on a VW e-Golf, which you can easily spend more than I spent on my Bolt Premier. I understand why right now someone might say, for my money, I have to go back to petrol. Even plug-in hybrids. Erin asked me if I would consider a Volt. I bought my Volt for 18. I saw basically my Bolt as if I had kept it, 2016 with like 50 grand on the clock for what I paid for my Volt originally, back when I had a Chevy Volt.
This is funny.
An X90 EV would be delightful, and you're closer than you'd think to what I actually got in some ways, but no.
Someone has guessed it, but I'm not gonna spoil it.
Philly says that these are satisfactorily made when we're sincere about fighting climate change. That's right. That's why I spent the money I did. It's why I bought the most recent car I bought, which is a pretty colossal sacrifice, I'm telling you. That's true. But the reality is that not everyone is in a position financially where they can make that sacrifice, or practically in terms of what their driving needs are, where that's a sacrifice they can make.
Mini EV was also considered, wasn't it?
It was. If I had the budget and wanted to, of all the cars I considered, the new Mini SE, the new electric Mini, is the one that I think I wanted the most in some ways. I really like small cars, but they're 30 grand, and there aren't enough around here to get a lease. And I think that with the state of the EV market, I needed to buy a used car, and in order both to keep used cars on the road, and because I'm in a place, I've got the Tesla for long drives. I wanted a car that would just keep me going until the market settles, or more interesting and more practical for me used cars come on the market, or Chevy gets its act together on the Bolt. But to be honest, I don't think I'll do another Bolt.
Apparently,
I think the EV crate motor conversions are very cool. It's a really, really cool idea.
So I didn't. That's not in the show. That's not in the show tomorrow. All right. So people are asking, what do I do? So just to recap, because there are nearly 300 people watching that. There were nearly over 300. Feel free to share this. We'll keep it going for a little bit longer. Like I say, I would love us to reach 1,000 Patreon supporters. We're currently at 994 Patreon supporters. And if you become the 1,000th Patreon supporter, something special will arrive for you. We'll make that happen. So too much chatter. We just purchased a new 2022 Bolt. We love it. Can we keep using it? Recommendations. Okay.
You can keep using it, but you have to follow GM's instructions. You can't park it indoors. You can't leave it plugged in. You can't charge it overnight.
Okay.
I mean,
so
that's my opinion.
To follow GM's recommendations, and I think we would both recommend that you do that.
I personally think that the liability risk of not doing that is high enough that I would not be willing to take that risk.
So we would say, Raymond, that you drive it. You don't drive it below 70 miles of remaining range, and you don't drive it above 90%.
Yep, you don't charge it to full.
I would just do it that way. If you can park outside, park outside. If you can charge during the day, charge during the day. If you cannot do those things, reach out to GM and go, guys, I need my car. So I am lucky, and I'm not going to lie to you right now. Both my Bolts are plugged in and are not directly in front of my garage, but they're close to my garage. And the reason is this: it's been super warm up here lately, and I know if I keep my cars plugged in and they only charge to Hilltop Reserve, so 90%, I know that the car's battery cooling system will run off the solar power that we've got on the roof of our home. But we're making sure that we're not overcharging them, we're not undercharging them, and we don't believe that our cars are at super high risk, because every car that has been involved in, and this is important for those of you who have Bolts, Raymond, and some of the other people watching, if you have your car, if you've owned your car since new, and you know that you've not driven it down to really low, and you've not charged it, you've not charged it up to 100% and just left it there, I would say that you will have a very, very minuscule risk of having anything go wrong. And that's
the
great.
problem is that if something does, it's big. That's the issue.
Yes, it is.
I would not be, like I said, if I hadn't moved out to Oregon, if I was still living in Maine and I could park my car out, a decent distance from the house, I wouldn't be as concerned. But parking it just right under someone's apartment, I can't take that chance. It's
different, yeah. Thank you very much to Sherelle, who's just become our 995th Patreon supporter. Keep it going. Can I turn the Bolt in through a lemon law? You could probably. I'm not a lawyer. Check with your local lemon laws. I think,
and you always can call the Chevy EV concierge, even though you're talking about a lemon law process. They will look at the lemon law in your state and take all that into consideration. And the EV concierge line is like 1883 or 888 or 833 EV Chevy. It's a silly number. I remember that it's a silly number.
I'm just going to try and look it up now. Let me have a look, because it's on my phone, because I called them earlier. So if you are 1866 EV Chevy.
Oh, well, I got the 8 and the EV Chevy right, and the rest I didn't. There was a question, isn't the repair free at a dealership? Yes, but there is at the moment no timeline for these repairs to happen.
And the other thing to bear in mind is that GM has admitted that it hasn't got a way of detecting the problem, because the problem is not one that you can't put a probe on and go, oh, this is the problem. This is
you should be able to do that, but you can't. And in fact, I think GM has said that the newer generation packs have much better internal monitoring systems. But yeah.
Someone said, I'd like to see more fast chargers at gas stations and more in smaller towns. So would we. I think part of the problem with EVs at the moment and part of the problems with everything that we're seeing right now is that we're so transfixed on range. We're so obsessed with range. And I think that's why we're at where we are, where we are. There were plenty of good shorter range, liquid cooled, thermally managed battery packs in other cars. The Spark EV, stonkingly good car, DC rapid charging, 80-mile range, little pocket rocket, goes like you know what off the proverbial shovel, and it works.
And right now you have to pay so much money for one if you want, especially if you want DC fast charging.
Apparently Steve has said that, and I haven't been able to I'm trusting you here, Steve. GM did announce a temporary halt to production at Orin today.
Makes sense.
I just realized that my wife's car is called Orion, and it was made at Orin, and it's spelt the same. So it's Orin, or Orion from Orin.
I like having a long-range car. I have to drive to Seattle tomorrow, and I like that I don't have to stop and fast charge it, but I wouldn't have minded doing a DC fast charging stop. To me, the Spark EV doesn't have enough range to be a primary car at 83 miles. I would be perfectly content with a car that had 100. My perfect car, to be honest, if I had a car with 125 miles of range in cold weather, so you're talking probably about 160 miles of range in good weather, and had 100 kilowatt DC fast charging, I would be perfectly content. I don't have any desire to pay for a much, much bigger battery. And I would be content with that even if I didn't also own the Tesla. You know, so, I think that, like, I owned a BMW i3 Rex, a 2014. My favorite car I've ever owned. It was a reliability nightmare. I never should have bought it, but my favorite car I've ever owned. And to be honest, I very, very rarely used the range extender. I drove for about 5.5 months on that car. And that car had a nominally like a 75-mile range, but in a main winter it had 55. When it was really cold. And I almost never used the range extender. I also drove that car from Maine to Maryland and back. It was a very, very long trip. And with DC fast charging stops, I only used 5.5 gallons of petrol. I think 70 miles is not enough for me for a primary car. If I didn't have the range extender, I would love to see more PHEVs with 80 miles, 70, 80 miles of range and a small little tiny gas range extender. But this focus on, we need, every car, I'm not going to buy an EV until it has 500 miles of range and can DC fast charge from 0 to 100 in 3.2 seconds and will go 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. I think that's just getting ridiculous.
We need more affordable batteries, more robust batteries, and we don't need longer range. 250 miles is enough for everybody because their bladder cannot go longer than that. And it's proven scientifically that humans cannot really concentrate for more than about 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours at a stretch. And unless you're on the German Autobahn doing 1.5 tons, you're not going to cover that in the requisite time. Conroy Jet says, you can go through the concierge chat, which is through the My Chevrolet website. Says, has your VIN number ready? Lots of people have said use the chat rather than going through.
There was a Dom said, like, does Winter not recommend the i3? I don't recommend a 2014 i3. I think i3s made after 2018 seem to have much, much better reliability than mine did. Be aware, the i3 is an expensive car to repair, and it is a very expensive car to insure because it has a BMW rondelle on the front and a body made of carbon fiber reinforced plastic. And insurance companies are terrified of carbon fiber reinforced plastic, and the BMW logo adds a whole bunch to your insurance cost and repairs cost anyway. Personally, I would be perfectly happy to buy a 2018, 2019 94 ampere i3 BEV. I would not recommend any year of BMW i3 Rex. There just have been too many issues with the range extender.
So we are now at 996. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Bennett. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you, Carl. We've got so many cool people who've just joined. Thank you. Keep going. We are nearly there. The thousandth Patreon supporter will make sure they get some Transport Evolved swag. But one of the other things that you're going to get, and I've not announced this yet, is a very special license plate from a very special car that I used to own. And I will send it your way and I'll sign it. And I'll maybe get the team to sign it as well. If you want the team to sign it, it'll have to be a big pledge to get the whole team to sign it. But I will sign it and send it to you.
There was just a mention of the electric Corvair, by the way. I think that if I could have any car in the world, the electric Corvair is very high on the list of cars that I would love to have in my garage. Right. I don't know if there are even any left, but gosh, I'm such a sucker for old cars, and the electric Corvair was just so cool.
So I just want to attack. These people are secretly not interested in solving climate change. That's the alibi. You know what, mate? I bloody well am. So time for a bit of a backstory. I grew up in the Waveney Valley in the UK. And don't worry, we're going to go back to the Bolt in a minute because lots of people are asking questions and I want to respond to people who are nervous and worried about their Bolts. And that's the reason why we're doing this live stream. The Waveney Valley is a really beautiful part of the UK. It's basically marshland. It's reclaimed sea, basically marshland. And someone says, as someone who lives in the rural Midwest, I can tell you that 250 miles is not enough. You coastal elitists are stupid. No, and I'll explain to you why. So, hold your horses, don't get your knickers in a twist, and just listen. I grew up in rural East Anglia. There's nothing for miles. And my dad was a dairy herdsman. He basically worked with cows all his life. He was paid to look after cows, milked cows. I grew up in an income, how about this? An income poor, but rich in other ways family. And by that, I mean, we didn't have a lot of stuff. We didn't have a lot of money. That was people who we were basically, my parents had a lot of knowledge and they shared that with me. Knowledge of the landscape, knowledge of the land, and the knowledge of the natural world, and taught me a great amount of that. My dad was an amateur an entomologist, and he loved insects and moths and all that kind of thing. And one year the marshland flooded. And so the marshland flooded and we had to move because the salt water that came onto the freshwater marshes meant that all the grass was killed. My dad lost his job and we had to move. That was the end, effectively, of my childhood. It was 1992. And I was I was 12 and a bit, 13 years old when that happened. And so now, ever since then, I wanted to kind of try and live a better life, tried to figure out ways of being cleaner, greener, safer, and smarter. And electric vehicles have always been one way of doing that for me. I've always tried to buy electric vehicles within my means rather than stretching those means, and to use bicycles, to use public transit. When I graduated from high school, I didn't drive. My parents didn't have a car when I was little. We used to go everywhere on public transit, trains, buses, and we lived in the middle of nowhere. So, if I wanted to go to a music event and I was a musician, like a music student, I went to music college, we would have to get public transport. And sometimes it was a long distance to go and get anything. And we did that because we wanted to have a better world. Now, obviously now I do drive, and I started off with classic cars. I've always been a bit of a petrol head, which sounds like an ironic statement given what I've just said. I've always liked cars. I've always liked traveling. I've always liked transportation. But at the first opportunity, I switched over to electric when I could make those connections. And for those who say, oh, but I live a long way from a rapid charger, or I live a long way from, it's not enough, the range is not enough, it's not enough, it's not enough.
No one's saying ban really long range cars. It would just be nice if companies offered some long range. There's no one is offering cars with relatively low range because of a small battery pack. Companies are offering lower range cars because they're making huge cars with huge batteries that still have crap ranges, but no one is offering good cars with 150 miles.
Well, they are in Europe. They are in Europe.
They are. But in America, like 150 miles isn't going to suit everyone's needs. Just like, someone said earlier, 150 miles or 200 miles won't work because 250 miles won't work because I need to tow. Well, fine. I used to own a Toyota Echo. That wouldn't have suited your needs either. I mean, it barely suited a terrible
there are
car.
Always going to be edge case scenarios, right?
Yeah. There are always going to be different people who need different things. But right now, the electric vehicle industry in America is super, super, super focused on massive ranges. And a lot of that, I was trying to explain this to Nikki because I grew up in America and Nikki didn't. A lot of that is that there is a huge mystique to the American highway. And like my dad won't buy, well, my stepdad won't. My dad probably wouldn't either, but my stepdad won't entertain the idea of an electric vehicle because he said to me, like, look, that's not a car I can get in and drive 1,000 miles. To which I responded, you've never done that.
Right.
You're 60 something years old. You've never gotten a car and driven 1,000 miles.
Right.
But he's so engaged with the idea that that's something that as an American he needs to and wants to be able to do. Someone said we've gotten away from the topic of GM's massive recall, and in some ways we have, in some ways we haven't, because
we're talking about cars that
the Bolt is so unique in the market. That's why so many of us owned them, because the Bolt was it was not like other cars in the market.
Thank you, Clifford.
That's the problem. The only thing that was really like the Bolt in some ways was the Leaf, with its non-thermally managed battery pack and rapid gate, and still not the kind of car you can throw a table in the back of as you can throw a table in the back of the Bolt.
Yep. Thank you, David. We're 2 away. This is going to happen.
And, there's a commentary that says, America really expanded during the era of the car. And that's true. America is really bloody big. Like we are a huge, Nikki and I both, not together, just drove from the East Coast to the West Coast. I went from Maine to Oregon. She went from Boston to Oregon. And America is incredibly large and incredibly spread out in a way that I think people in some other parts of the world don't really get, and in a way which makes transportation challenging, because we don't have a lot of other good options. Someone said to me when we were talking about going cross country, they said, why don't you take a train? And I looked at it, and of course, taking a train from coast to coast in America is a many, many, many day affair that is extraordinarily expensive. Like, it's just, it's between the railroads and the cars. Yeah. America has spread out in a way that, like, we get commenters sometimes who'll say, like, this is stupid. Everyone should just ride a bicycle, which, 1, is ableist as hell. 2 is kind of classist as hell, because in order to ride a bicycle, you have to live in a city, which these days means spending a lot of money usually. And it's just not practical on the scale of this country, unfortunately, for many people to do.
All right, so let's bring it back a little bit to someone who said, 250 miles is still not enough. I live in the Midwest. To that, I would argue, how did I drive across the Midwest?
Well, in fairness, there were only certain corridors in which you could make it from coast to coast. You couldn't go just any route. Neither could I. There's a lot more charging corridors to go coast to coast than there used to be.
So let's be honest with each other right now. 70 years ago, you couldn't do that in a car.
What's 70 years ago put us at? 70 years ago puts us at 70 years ago you could. Yeah, you could.
Eisenhower.
In the 40s?
Didn't build until after the end of the war.
Oh, that's true. So the highway system would have made it a lot more difficult. Right. The car, I owned a 1950 car, and if my 1950 Pontiac had been in better nick, I would have been willing to take it cross country.
My point is, it's also it's not about the car.
No, I see your point.
It's about the infrastructure. And so for those who, I've driven my Bolt down from Portland, Oregon, down to Southern California and back over 4 days, twice. I've driven my Bolt EV to Austin, Texas in 5 days with some of the rest of the team. My wife drove during winter, during Christmas. She drove from here in just west of Portland, kind of 30 miles west of Portland, all the way to a town in Missouri. I nearly said the name of the town. She would have killed me.
Yeah, we had a commenter the other day. You mentioned traveling Missouri, and the commenter said, well, that's not a trip you can do in a Bolt. And I responded to the commenter and said, actually, Nikki's wife has done that in the Bolt. It's not just a theory. Yes, she's done it.
So it's not the car, it's the infrastructure. And my point is, and I didn't realize this. Thank you, Laura Shear Clark. You are 999, I think. 999. Woohoo!
But I think one of the things when we talk about these things,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry, we're talking over each other. One of the things with the interstate system was that I didn't realize this. In the early 20th century, there was a military expedition from Washington, D.C. to the West Coast to see how easy and how difficult it would be. And Eisenhower was part of that as a member of the military. It wasn't until he then became president, all those years later, that he did that.
Well, yeah, because he invaded Europe and saw how effectively things could be moved along the autobahns and some of the big roads in Europe.
Right. So back to the questions. What is 999? Says Odd Day. We have 999 Patreon supporters.
Apparently not
anymore. 1,000.
We've got someone said that it looks like we've hit 1,000.
We did just hit 1,000. Who is that lucky person? Wow, 1001. Oh, I'm now going to have to look in my email and figure out which one of you was 1,000.
One of the things that I think we don't talk about enough about the Bolt, and that we're getting away from talking about in EVs in general, is we talk a lot about range and we don't talk a lot about efficiency. The Bolt is a reasonably efficient car. Living in the West Coast, you can get 4.4 and a quarter, miles per kilowatt hour very reasonably. I got involved in a conversation about this on Reddit the other day where someone asked about the efficiency on the Hummer EV and said the Hummer EV must be a pretty inefficient car. And someone responded saying it can't be. It has 250 or 300 miles of range. And I was like, yeah, but it does that with a battery pack the size of Texas. It's got 200 kilowatt hour battery pack. We need to talk about the efficiency factor. So Roger says, let's talk about the Bolt and how you all GM fanboys say be a legit compared to the Model 3. I own both, and I will tell you that it is. Especially when price is factored in, because the Bolt is significantly cheaper. I find it to be there are things that the Model 3 does better.
This is the toxicity that we were talking about earlier, right?
The Model 3's DC rapid charging is far superior. But the reality is that other than my cross-country road trip, I don't DC rapid charge all that often. And I know people who almost never do. I find some of the tech in the Tesla is very nice. I quite like autopilot. I've done videos about autopilot before. I've got a video about autopilot that's going to be coming out. I quite like autopilot. I wish the Bolt at least had adaptive cruise control. It's ridiculous that it doesn't. But I find the Bolt, especially in sport mode, is extremely peppy. I don't tend to like front wheel drive cars, but it does handle quite nice. It handles like a real proper hot hatch. I prefer being able to use Apple Maps and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. The Tesla map system is really good. There's some things I don't like about it. but they are very legitimately, yes, the Model 3 doesn't have a 360-degree camera. That is absurd. I love the 360 camera in my Bolt. I'm going to miss it. I won't need it in my next car. My next car is smaller. But when I'm driving the Model 3, I'm always like, how come I can't get a 360 view? Especially because we saw in AI Day that internally the cars with FSD are seeing a 360 view. Anyway, I think the Bolt is a very legitimate Tesla Model 3 competitor. It would be if they didn't catch fire. But
we have some. I agree with you. I think it is.
Yeah, but you're not as big a fan of the Model 3 as I am, so my opinion counts more here. Because I legitimately love the Model 3.
No, so people.
I didn't say you didn't like it. I said you're not as big a fan.
Let's clear something up. When I drove the Model 3, I really enjoyed driving it. I said it was one of the best Teslas I'd driven. I really thought it was amazing. An amazing car. However, I did not think it was a car that would suit me, and there's a difference.
It wouldn't.
So Brent, I'm just going to tell Brent one of the things that we're going to send his way, and people keep joining, keep coming. I mean, we're now at like 1,003. I'm not going to say no.
Goodness no.
Okay, let me just put this straight and narrow. We've got 341 people watching, so it's a really good time for me to point this out. I'm going to talk to Brent about what he's going to get, and then I'm going to go back to some of the questions that have been coming up about this. It is awesome. So first up, Transport Evolved is run, for those who are watching for the first time, if you've never watched it before, or you're just watching and you're not sure who this is Winter. He's one of my employees. He works on the Transport Evolved crew. There's also Kate Walton-Elliott. There's also Erin Carley. And of course, our wonderful social media manager, Kit. And there are two people who work at Transport Evolved full time, myself and Erin. Erin does all the graphics. She was responsible for the really awesome AI Day graphic that you'll see on the
thumbnail. That was so cool.
That was literally me waking up and going, crap, it's AI Day. I'd forgotten. And saying in the chat, wouldn't it be cool if we could do like something over the AI movie poster? And Erin was like, yes, we will do it. So that's what we did. We run completely independently. We are supported by donations through Patreon, Ko-fi, Bitcoin, ad revenue from YouTube. We do very few sponsored videos because we only do sponsored videos with products that we personally use and that we personally endorse, which is why we don't do other things. We don't get money from car companies. We don't accept sponsorships from car companies, unlike a lot of YouTubers who have sponsorships from car companies and then cover others, because we feel that would affect our editorial impartiality. So we are supported by your donations. And right now I pay myself below minimum wage. I pay Erin a decent salary. I pay Winter not enough. I pay Kate not enough, and I pay Kit not enough, because Kit, Winter, and Kate are all part-timers. I would love them to work full-time. We do not have a video editor. When you watch a video, 99% of the videos on our channel, which is 15 videos a week, are edited by myself. We film most of our own stuff. We edit anything I don't edit. It's either Winter or Kate. Winter does some of the coloring for us. So please help us, continue to support us, and make us larger. Brent, what you are going to get, what I am going to send to you, is something that's very dear and near to my heart. And I hope that you appreciate it. It has been sat in my garage for a while. It's a license plate from the Toyota RAV4 EV that I used to drive. It is a license plate. It's an Oregon license plate. It's on the Crater Lake, and it says RAV4 EV. It used to be on my RAV4. I will send that to you. I might even ask my wife to make a frame for it if she says yes, because she's a woodworker. So that is part of your 1,000th Patreon reward. There will be some other things to come. Watch this space. Now,
and for folks who don't know, Nikki had a Gen 1 RAV4 EV, which are vanishingly rare these days. And for people who are curious, as we talk about alternatives to the Bolt, as a company, we don't really really endorse the Gen 2 RAV4 EV. It was a fantastic
Well, we don't
little
endorse
SUV.
any
Well,
vehicles.
no, we don't suggest you get a Gen 2 RAV4 EV, despite it having been a fantastic car, because the second gen RAV4 EV was made by Toyota with Tesla battery and drivetrain components, and both Tesla and Toyota want nothing to do with them, so there's no product support for them anymore.
Right. To your questions about the Bolt, and I don't know if... Thank you, Robert. 99 Nation videos, $15 a month on Patreon of minimum wage for someone per month. It is true. That is very true. For those who are asking, Bolt EV, are there any fires related to charging at 110 volts, the slower speed? I do not know the answer to that. However, what I do know is that the Bolt fires are occurring if one of 4 conditions are, well, 3 things have to happen, as far as I can tell, for the battery fires to happen. First of all, you need to have both of those defects in one of the battery cells in your vehicle, one of the battery modules. Those defects are a bent anode, a torn anode, and a bent separator. The separator being the thing between the anode and the cathode in the cell. So those 2 physical manufacturing defects that we were talking about earlier on need to be present. Second, you need to regularly drive your battery and your car down to a really low state of charge, like run it into the amber and the red. And then you need to charge it up all the way to full. Those are like the classic things that have all been...
They seem to be commonalities in these fires.
Oh, Brent says, please send it to the 999th. And if you're ever in Olympia, look us up and we'll treat you to an outsized lunch. What an awesome memento. And I'm just happy to support you as a neighbor up north. We do have a studio up there as well. So unofficially.
But it is important to understand that these cars that caught fire were not necessarily plugged in when it happened. These cars were charged to full after being discharged low, but in some instances they had been unplugged prior to the fires occurring.
Right. So what happens is that the cells start to go into thermal runaway, and at that point, that is things start to go a little bit haywire. So that is the point at which things start to go a little bit bad. So I've got to just make sure that our I think our 999th was Laura. I need to check on that. So Laura, I think it was you, but let me double check on that. There'll be some other stuff coming to Brent though. Don't worry about that. So those are the 3 things that lead to your battery fire going, right? You have to be high, low discharge, and then full charge. Doesn't necessarily have to be all the way up. And I think what's happening here is that with the cell voltages in your battery, and this is kind of getting a little nerdy, when you have a lithium ion battery, the lithium ion battery is made up of lots of smaller cells. Stop me if you've heard this one before. The battery cells are all operating at a pretty low voltage, like 3 point something volts, 3.7, something like that, nominal. And when you charge them, they maybe go up to 3.9 or 4 volts. I don't know what the range is for the Bolt EV, so I'm just guessing. And when you discharge them, they go down to like 3 point something at the lower end of the 3. And when your battery is charged, all the battery cells get charged up. And when you discharge them, all the battery cells get discharged. But we're talking about something that works at an atomic level, right? Battery packs work at an atomic level, and it's really difficult for us to get our heads around. But it's just the same as computer chips. If you are a gamer, if you are someone who's into building PCs, you will know that some PC chips will come out of the production facility and you can clock them at a higher speed than you might be able to clock an identical chip, seemingly identical, that comes from a different factory. Now, those manufacturing defects, material defects, or not defects, differences. Those material differences between those two chips is what allows you to do one thing with one and not with another. The same is true of batteries. Some batteries will have just a little bit more internal capacity than others. Some will be able to withstand slightly deeper discharge than others. And so when you discharge those batteries, when the batteries are new, they're all matched, meaning the company tries to match all of the batteries, all of the battery cells in the module and all of the modules so that they're all a similar capacity. Because if you didn't do that, then the battery pack would become very unbalanced over time. And that's why you need something called a BMS, a battery management system. It's just TrueCheck literally just said that in the chat. So your battery management system can regulate little differences between the cells. But as those differences get larger, the battery management system has to work harder to keep everything balanced. Now, because of the way that discharge, the voltage drops on a battery, it's not like your old starter car on your starter battery on a petrol car, where the voltage drops quite precipitously fairly early on. The battery's still got plenty of charge, but instead of being at 12 and a bit volts, it's down to 10, and then it's done. With a lithium-ion battery, which is what most of these vehicles have, Laura says we're currently at 1,003 Patreon supporters. I'm just blown away.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you all so much. You literally are paying for Winter to be here right now because he's run out of hours. So he's been on for an hour and a half extra. I'll be paying him an hour and a half extra next week. So those battery voltages with lithium-ion, they very gently drop down as the state of charge of the battery gets low, and then right at the very end they take a big tumble and they go right down, and it goes down quite quickly if you plot state of charge versus voltage.
And this is of course part of why in the vast majority of EVs in the world you can't discharge it truly empty. This is part of why cars have buffers on the bottom and the top, so that when your car says, I'm out of charge, and it won't spin the motor anymore, there is still charge in the battery that you're not allowed to use for this reason.
Although on the Bolt EV, Bolt EUV, there is some question as to how much buffer there is, and some people are sort of saying there's less buffer than there would be for other car companies. So when the battery gets
the batteries catch fire, so there you go.
Right. So when the battery gets towards its low state of charge, the difference in voltages between the strongest cells and the weakest cells is the greatest, and that means the battery management system has to work harder. The problem is when you've got a large difference between the weakest cell and the strongest cell in terms of their voltage, that affects things like the cell's ability to allow electricity to pass through it and all kinds of other things. And that can lead to batteries heating up, that can lead to batteries misbehaving, and ultimately can push the pack out further. I don't want to get into like battery 101 here, and I feel like I have. But that's engineering nerdy stuff. And what GM and LG Energy should have done was designed a better battery management system to deal with things, to stop things. Will this mean the end for the Bolt? No possibility of an RHD for us here. No, it's not going to happen. You're not going to see a right-hand drive. GM has already said it's not going to happen. Holden is basically dead in GM
has basically walked away from Australia entirely. It's kind of tragic.
So that's not going to happen. So back to the reasons why you shouldn't have that battery. You shouldn't push that battery down to a low state of charge. That's why GM is saying don't drive it below 70 miles. Because that's the point at which GM thinks if you go, as long as you stay above that, you should be fine. Frankly, if you go below that occasionally, you should be fine. if you go regularly into the very low part of the state of charge. That is why it's saying there's a problem. Now, to those of you who are asking about the batteries, is my battery going to be okay? Should I just get a battery replacement? Here's my honest take. The reason why I am pursuing a buyback or an MSRP swap right now is because I live in hills, which means I put my car through a little bit more every day when I come home. And also my car has more miles than most people. My wife's car's got 95, nearly 96,000 miles on the clock. My car has 65,000 miles on the clock. And the batteries in those cars are someone says, Zach says that concierge chat on Chevy's website is telling me to call 1833 EV Chevy about the recall. Not much
knew
help.
there were threes in there.
And someone says, remember, heat and buffers can affect degradation, but there isn't anything to show it is related to the fire. It might be, but we won't know that. So it's a manufacturing defect which can exacerbate all of what I was just explaining. Normally, if the battery was well made, all of that wouldn't have a problem. It's when there is a manufacturing physical defect within the battery that exacerbates all of the above. That's what we've got, kind of like the perfect storm. And people are saying, will the replacement batteries be good? I hope so. I mean,
we thought they were going to be when the 2017 and 2019
right?
were coming.
So I think in GM's case, I don't think anybody examined that 2020 production line because it wasn't under suspicion. But you will note, and this is the difference, right? When it was the 2017 through 19, LG Energy didn't really do a whole lot about it. It basically carried on. But now it's from a US production facility. It was one fire this week and one fire on July 25th that are involving cars with US made battery packs. And that was enough for GM to go, no, we're done. I assume there's a stop sale. I assume that this battery recall campaign will take a while to get going.
And take a while to do. I think that we're going to be looking at a very long process.
And we're going to do a video next week talking about that with someone who's offered to take a Bolt battery apart on air with us.
So the thing that I would want to see, and I don't know if we will, I would want to see an Ultium variant built to fit into the Bolt casing, because Ultium is where LG Energy and GM have been devoting all of their energy, no pun intended, and development. They've been very clear that the Bolt battery pack format is a dead end. They're going to keep, well, they were going to keep making Bolts and Bolt EUVs, but that's why the Bolt wasn't getting faster DC quick charging time. It's why range expansions were quite small, because they had really said, like, this is old gen tech, just like they moved on from the Spark EV battery pack to the Bolt EV battery pack. Now they're moving on to Ultium. And I would feel better in some ways if they came and said, this is an Ultium battery designed to fit into the existing Chevy Bolts. I don't know if that could be done. I don't know if that will happen, but I'm in a place where I don't have a lot of faith if they're just going to keep making this battery and try to make the production line not screw them up. That makes me nervous.
Yeah, it does.
The Spark EV, Andrew, had also had LG Energy derived batteries, but the chemistry and manufacture internally was completely different. The Bolt was a whole new generation with all new chemistry and all new design.
Yeah. But here's the thing. The likelihood of GM investing money into putting I don't want to pee on anyone's parade. It's not going to happen. We're not going to get an Ultium battery in the Bolt. And here's why. The Bolt is built around the battery pack casing, the battery pack design. That is not going to automatically just mean that they can put a new one in. So sorry, Zach. I'm sorry. And Laura, thank you. When I reload the Transport Evolved Patreon page, it says 1,003 patrons. It does still. If you want to be a patron of Transport Evolved, there is still time. Help us out. Help us get to a point where we can hire more people, or rather give more hours to the people that we have, because I'm working too much.
And Philly, I'm I'm not putting my faith in Ultium. It's just technology. It's just their new battery technology. The only thing I'm saying is that the reason I think that would be good is because the company is currently the battery tech that they are committed to using for the foreseeable future, and I think they're more willing to put R&D into the Ultium line than they are to put serious research and manufacturing, retooling, and everything into making good batteries for the Bolts. That's because the Bolt battery pack design is now a corporate dead end.
And I think this is what we're ultimately going to see. If it's discussed that these batteries are just going to be too expensive to make, then we're going to see probably a buyback from GM, much as we saw with the Volkswagen Dieselgate.
I do think that's a real possibility.
Again, Ken, I don't want to harp about this, but this is not helpful to EVs.
But it is understandable in the context of General Motors specifically. But it's worth noting that General Motors has quite a lot of electric cars in its lineup coming up right now. Like GM is saying, and they're putting serious money. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars into electric vehicles with their upcoming thing as GM pivots to let's make electric trucks because everyone wants electric trucks and electric SUVs because those of us who love somewhat smaller hatchbacks are just screwed in the American automotive market.
Well, I mean, unfortunately, yes, that is the case.
I'm a little bitter because I don't want an SUV.
Someone who is seriously considering an electric SUV and an electric pickup right now.
If I could have a flippin' VW ID3, I would really seriously think about it. And I don't want a damn ID4.
Yeah.
You know, I want BMW to take the Mini Electric and put a bigger battery pack in it. Doesn't it be a lot bigger? I just want 160 miles of range out of one. That would be lovely. And I want it to not be the least efficient. The problem with the Mini SEs is the least efficient electric car after the Porsche Taycan currently on the market, which bugs the crap out of me.
And I just feel like a broken record here. Making batteries is hard.
Yes.
I think LG Energy is 100% to blame for the cell problems on all of the EVs that are currently having issues. And there
yes,
are
LG Energy is to blame for the blowy uppy thing, and GM is to blame for how the blowy uppy thing has been handled on the customer relations and customer care side of things.
However, I would also say that perhaps GM didn't do a good contract with LG Energy, and I suspect that's something that GM is not doing very well these days because there's been several poor decisions that GM's made lately. Apparently, an ID3 just had a battery fire as well.
Yes, I saw that. The ID3 is available depending on market, determines who makes the batteries. I believe some ID3s might be Cattle, and I think some ID3s might be LGE. I'm not positive on that, though.
Again, it is impossible to test for every single eventuality. Yep. Maybe this is the engineer in me going, this is not just, we cannot, and we must not have the mentality of one thing happens, therefore all of this particular car are bad. Because if we did that, then I would be saying all Teslas are bad, which while people think I do not. Are LFP batteries safer? Yes, because they have different cell chemistries. My Bolt is a 4-year-old car. I'm fine with old battery tech. Why would I expect Chevy to put a new tech battery in my old car? I do expect a battery without a defect, says Mark. Mark,
sadly, you don't have one.
Go to the top of the class, Mark, because that is exactly the attitude that we should be having.
Yeah, I just the only reason I brought up new tech is I don't think GM is still really committed to making the old tech or making the old tech not be full of defects or have defects in them.
Well, again, you're talking about about GM, but it's actually, this is a due diligence. LG is going to lose its shirt over this. There's going to be a lawsuit.
You know what I think's happening with LG.
Go on, share it with the class because I know.
I think that LG Energy is going to file for bankruptcy, and I think they're going to reform their fundamental assets into a new company without the commitments that the old company had. On paper, LG Energy will cease to exist, a new company will come into being, and GM and Hyundai Kia will be SOL. That is what I think is going to happen. I would love to be wrong about that, but that is my theory. I don't think LG Energy is going to shell out billions of dollars to replace all these faulty batteries.
I mean, so what is going to be my initial car replacement?
I'm trying to get Nikki to look at a Y, but she doesn't. It's not really working.
It's not actually me.
Your wife doesn't want a Y?
No.
Oh, see, I think a Y would suit your lifestyle well, but
and here's why. Yesterday, robot overlords. No, thank you. As Gen Xers, we are acutely aware of that. Second, I do not want to support a car company that I do not believe that I will be able to buy spare parts for and work on my car.
I will say, I love my Tesla Model 3. The thing that scares me about that car is a fender bender. I don't worry about it catching fire. I don't even really worry about it breaking down. It's been very reliable for us. I was in an accident in my Bolt. I got rear-ended in the Bolt, and I needed a new bumper and a new tail light, and it took like 5 days to get fixed with genuine GM parts. And I know from other Tesla owners that is not the experience that people have when their Teslas get body damage specifically. That's the thing that scares me about the Tesla, and that I completely understand.
I don't, and that's her biggest concern is parts reliability.
I get it. I do get that.
Because she has a family member, she has several family members who are aging, who are a long way away, and she would like to be able to just get in and go. Also, she has reached that part in her life. My wife is a little bit older than me. She has reached that part in her life where she wants reliability above everything. And some of her friends have got Teslas. Some of the people we know have got Teslas and complain about it. And there's something... Let's talk about this now. And I feel like I'm just opening the Pandora's box, but I'm just going to go there. There are lots of people I know who have Teslas, who have great Tesla experiences, who really, really enjoy it. Most Tesla owners that I've encountered will talk about problems that they've had with their car behind closed doors, but they won't be vocal about it online. They won't be vocal about it online because they are petrified of being shot down and ostracized for having an issue.
You should see the Tesla Motors subreddit, because a lot of people talk about their problems there.
Yeah,
these days.
I mean, subreddits may be slightly different, but a lot of people will not talk about problems with their car in public, partly because a lot of them are supporters of the company, and they're like, I don't want to cause Tesla problems. I don't want to talk about this problem. And, people tell me about their problems, but I won't then tell people about them because it's not my problem to discuss, right? I think most of the Bolt EV owners that are pissed off with GM right now, we're not holding back, right? We're not holding back. And there have been plenty of people in this chat today who are more than happy to wait for a battery replacement. And I would be happy to wait for a battery replacement if I knew there was a time frame. Right now there isn't, which is why I am going, I want to look and see what you offer me. Now, if GM turns around and says, we'll give you an MSRP swap and we'll allow you to go to another car company, which I believe they have to in my state, I'm basically just relying on Oregon law right now.
Yeah.
If Oregon law, and I think it does, allows me to get an MSRP swap and take that credit to another car company and get another car that isn't a Bolt, jobs are good. And if they offer me an MSRP swap, I'll be happy. If they offer me a buyback, I might be less happy. But if they offer me a buyback and then say, or we can replace your battery, or we can replace your battery with a known good one that we're going to guarantee for 100,000 miles is actually a good option for me, because we've got 2 high mileage Bolts, one of which is 5,000 miles from rolling over out of its battery warranty, and the other one has got 65,000 on it.
If they say, we can replace your battery with a known good one, and here is the date on which that is going to happen. If they just say,
I will say yes.
If they just say, we're going to replace your battery, and you say, when? And they say, when we replace your battery, you're going to say no, because when we replace your battery could be 2025. I don't think it's going to take that long, but you don't have any guarantee.
That's how I feel about it. You've just nailed it. So if GM calls me tomorrow, because we're waiting for a call back either tomorrow or Monday,
I'm waiting to,
and says, okay, your car is worth this much, we'll pay you this much, or we can get you in on this day to do this, then we're good. Someone said, how do I get the buyback? You call the Chevy EV concierge. Either call them on the number that's in your app, your smartphone app for Chevy, or from the Chevy website, you should be able to find the EV concierge number. It's 1-833 EV Chevy.
I hate that. I hate when people, like, I went to Chevy's website and it just said EV Chevy, and I was like, what are the numbers? I don't feel like doing the alphanumeric thing, and they didn't list the numbers. I was like, it's pet peeve. It's late.
Can we see your garden, Nikki? No. How do you know I have one? I don't. So there you go. I live in Oregon. I can't actually, interestingly, I cannot, kind of, this is off air. Oh, not really off air. It's kind of off hours. I cannot take most prescription drugs, and I cannot take any recreational drugs.
Which means when it comes time for us to do a video with us compromised, because we've talked about possibly getting drunk and or high and reading some of our really nasty comments for Patreon, I'm not sure what you're going to do.
I can get drunk, but I can't.
Okay, you see, I can't get drunk.
No,
I can get high, but I can't get drunk, and you can get drunk but not high. So it'll be fabulous.
I cannot get drunk. My metabolism is so high that if I try and imbibe some alcohol, I can have half a pint and be merry. At which point my body goes, I'm done now.
We'll just have to do me high as balls and Kate drunk and you in character as Queenie Deerheart. That's what we'll have to do. I think people would find that fun. So, I mean, that's sort of where we're at. I mean, it's still very much new. Hi, Queenie. It's still very much new news. We're going to do a bigger video on the Bolt when we have more information. We're hoping to get more information out of Chevy. I'm not super optimistic at this point. I think they're just going to point us back to public statements.
No, they are.
But that's where we're at with this. I feel terrible about it because I like the car, and I know a lot of people who like the car. And I think Nikki is right that rather than replace all the batteries, I think we could be looking at GM just saying Dieselgate style, give us your car back.
It's funny because now all the furries in the chat room are going, yes, yes. And like at least 3 of the people who have gone yes are people I know personally would be up for me doing that in character. No, it's not happening today. Funny thing is, this character has a steam-powered airship, so she's kind of very environmentally friendly.
I think that a steam done right, a steam range extender in a home-built EV could be terribly fun. So yeah, is there anything else that we want to talk about?
I think we're good. Thank you to everybody who joined and supported us.
Yes, goodness. Thank you for all the thank you for the conversation, not to mention
thank you for the conversation. I hope that we've helped some of you understand what's going on. Someone said, look at the contract with Nicola. Yeah, GM's been making dumb decisions. And so, people were asking me what vehicle. So I will say this quickly. Do I disclose?
Well, everyone knows that you have an F-150 Lightning reservation. And I want to say, we've gotten a lot of people who've said, why would you get an F-150 Lightning and not a Cybertruck? And there's a couple of key things. And one of them is that cars are emotional decisions, and you don't like the look of the Cybertruck personally. You don't want a Cybertruck in your driveway. I
No,
think the
don't like-
Cybertruck's kind of fun. I don't want a truck.
I like the design, but look, I can like the design of the Cybertruck and not want the
Not
design
want
of the
one.
Cybertruck.
Yeah.
I think that
I was a 13-year-old boy in the 90s. I look at the Cybertruck and go, it's so cool. But I don't know
and
that I
right
want
to
one in my
repair is still an
driveway.
issue. Look,
Yep.
I own a I look at certain motorbikes and go, that is freaking beautiful. Some of the Harley Davidsons, some of the big Harley Davidson choppers are truly amazing to look at.
But
Would
not
I
your
want
style
a
of bike.
Harley Davidson?
No.
Heck
Neither.
no. I cannot, like, this does not, it does not push my buttons when it comes to a motorcycle. I want something that I can sit on with my legs.
I just bought
lean into
Nikki's dream
corners.
bike.
You
I feel
did, and
awful.
I
I
hate
just
you
bought
for it.
Nikki's dream bike.
I actually that would be the color that I would own.
I know it is. I
In
will
fact,
let you
my
ride
friend
it
had
sometime.
the slightly larger version of that.
Yeah,
the
the
850 or 800cc engine.
Yeah.
And second gear on that thing is just beautiful.
It's good on mine too. But I mean, so the F-150 Lightning, you can go to any Ford dealership and get some parts for it. I can see why it suits you.
Right. And also I grew up on a farm, and I know that I can abuse 10 kinds of... I know I can abuse an F-150.
I hope so. The interiors have gotten so hoity-toity that I question whether or not they can stand up to abuse the way they used to.
No, I could abuse that. My wife could abuse that, even more importantly. And that would be a good thing. I don't think we could abuse the Cybertruck. And also...
I don't know. I think that the Cybertruck may stand up well to abuse. We don't know. The thing is that you know what an F-150 is. Even though you've never used an F-150 Lightning, the F-150 name carries connotations, and the Cybertruck is a new car. I think it's very possible the Cybertruck may be an excellent work vehicle, but we won't know until people start beating on them, and you need to know now. If
there was a Land Rover Defender, battery electric Land Rover Defender, then I would already own it. There's one in the UK you can buy for about 130 grand.
Electric Classic Cars has done Land Rover Defenders, and they are fantastic.
They did one based on the Baddies Land Rover from one of the James Bond movies, and it is absolutely stunning.
Electric Classic Cars just did a battery electric Isetta conversion. And I told Owen that if I could have any car right now, I'd be really tempted by a battery electric Isetta.
Yeah. And so I am also hoping to get an Aptera as a long range vehicle. So the F-150 is going to be a work truck that we can use to bring all of the work stuff to events. And you've seen, I don't think many of you have seen us at events, but we carry a lot of stuff to events. Also, obviously the Aptera, good long distance car, and it's cool and I want it. And I'm not going to tell you what the other potential is, because I've just seen my emblem on my hoodie, my Dutch Angel Dragon hoodie, and so that's reminding me to be good, and so I'm not going to put.
And Nick Allen says cyber camping can't wait. I want to say I did 3 days sleeping in the summer. It was several months ago, sleeping in the Model 3, and it was fantastic. I would have been more comfortable in a Model Y than the Model 3, but camping with the Tesla, I think the Cybertruck is going to be very cool. I think I would cheerfully camp for a week out of a Model Y.
No, I would
3 days. 3 days in a Model 3, and it was fantastic.
But we have been on for nearly 2 hours. I owe Winter 2 extra hours of salary, so I hope.
It's awful.
Have we earned enough to cover your 2 hours?
I think more than have. We more than have. Absolutely.
Maybe you'll get a bottle of gin. Yes, she'd like that. She'd like that. Never play a character. Just advice here: never have a character, whether it's cosplay, fursuit, or whether some other character that you portray on stage or screen or anything else. Never have a character that likes something that you do not. This character adores gin. I hate the stuff, and I've had actually people come up to me at events and gift me bottles of really expensive gin. But I hate the stuff. She loves it. So
that is an adorable problem to have. All right, thank you all so much for joining us. This has been really fantastic.
It's really, really fun. If you want us to do it again, please let me know.
Yep. And I can't wait for you all to see what I have bought, because it's going to be an adventure.
We know, don't we? Yes, we do. We do know. And also, 10 is probably going to be slightly delayed tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because it's now...
Because AI Day and then GM. So...
Yes. So, absolutely. Anyway, thank you, everybody. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being awesome. Thanks to the amazing Patreon people who are streaming by right there. Look at all those wonderful names streaming by. They are absolutely wonderful. So
they make what we do possible.
I paid a full... Cheryl says, I paid a full year on Patreon, so there's your pay.
Thank you, Cheryl.
And I hope that Cheryl is enjoying her plugin hybrid that she did. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you very much.
I hope that Cheryl is enjoying the plugin hybrid that she got so that she could help her sister. I don't know if she did buy it in the end. I know she was looking at it. So, yeah, that was very cool. How many battery packs can be produced a year is a great question.
Every year it's more.
Gigawatt hours in
worldwide.
Q1 and 2 this year so far worldwide. That will be on where are GM going to store all those dead battery modules?
Hopefully they'll recycle them.
Redwood Recycling and plenty of other places. Hopefully they'll go back in. So this list is going to get even longer now.
Yeah,
this list is going to get even longer. So
we're just gonna have to play it faster. I will say I gave up my Patreon membership when I got hired, and I do miss watching for my name. I used to watch the end of every video so I could see my name scroll by, because I'm
and you know, we're actually going to stop it right here because I just want to zoom this back because a lot of people have actually asked what this is. I'm going to say it. Transport Evolved acknowledges that we live and work on land stolen from indigenous nations. We are located on the ancestral lands of the Confederate tribes of the Grand Ronde. We recognize the traditional custodians of these lands, and we pay respect to elders past and present. That is really important. It's good to know where you are, where you've come from, and the importance of the land you live and work on. Thank you very much, everybody. It has been great. Thank you from myself, from Winter, and from a time-traveling immortal border collie. So, as Queenie would say, pip, pip. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.